to actually look at you and the product and the service in a different way as an experience. Give them the identity with your product rather than selling a commodity.
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
How would you like to achieve your first million? And today we have David joining us from India. So David, tell us, what are the 5 steps that small entrepreneurs should be doing to make the first million?
Great, Harry. Thanks for inviting me on your show. Listen, I got 5 steps, and I think you and I can expand on it. And the first step that I want to talk to you about is changing the internal script that many entrepreneurs have. And one of the internal script is they feel, they cannot do it, or they just feel that what they really want is simply out of their reach. And that really comes from a problem of, undermining your own belief systems that you actually need to understand. So what I really come when I talk to an entrepreneur is understanding where that internal script is coming from. Because as you know, when I was introduced to you earlier, is that I come from a very, a background which is steeped in understanding consciousness and various other religions. And we've got 1/3 of the population, or maybe half of the world's population in India, China, etc. And the problem is that I've noticed in my research over 40 years is that the external language, which many demagogues or leaders or politicians basically tell individuals that you have something called suffering, which you must go past. And many of my entrepreneurs, believe, which I don't believe, there is no pain, no gain. So they really actually feel that they don't deserve success because that karma, or whatever you want to call it, is my lot. And I said, no, let's pause over here. I said, if that's what you're already believing, then I need to move that mindset away and try to get you to look at the problem completely differently. So one of the first steps that I do with a client is I help you change your mind.
Very good. Amazing. So David, what will be the step number 2 then?
Well, one of the things is that I introduced this crap of concept, and, when I'm talking about half of the population, we, especially India and China, which is deeply religious, since the time of birth, they are instructed to basically say that you are born in certain circumstances and your circumstances cannot change. And most of your suffering or your lot is based on your individual effort. And they call it by different names. They call it karma in Hinduism. In Buddhism, we call it dukkha, which is suffering. And you're responsible for that. And by the way, you can't get out of it.
Wow.
What is implied in that is you're responsible alone for your success and your failure. And this idea is so embedded in the DNA that it takes me a lot of effort to get them to collaborate. That means we have manifested collectively, not as an individual. So I'm encouraging entrepreneurs is you need to think outside this whole idea of moving from the me to the we. Because one of my, when I quote some of the entrepreneurs, I basically say is that none of us can be successful on our own. We understand is that our businesses, our lives are interdependent. And we need to understand that interdependency, and we need to look outside of our situation to understand how we can actually collaborate and make ourselves successful. Now, when I was a banker and as a businessman, I can just share with you some of my failures in a disaster. When I failed, my health reason, my business failed, etc., I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was very hesitant to ask people for help. So I don't have all the skill sets to help me out from my own bullshit. I need to talk to somebody who has an objective view and perhaps can complement my success or my skill set to actually get this out. And if you go through all the entire chains, really, you will understand is that everybody has got their place in business. Everybody is not really equal. They've got their own skill sets, and we need to join hands to actually complement this. So I actually told one of my trader friends, he says, why did you join me, David? You're a great financial person. I said, no, you stay where you are and I stay where I am. So both of us can trade and both of us can earn money. So this idea of wealth is actually a flow or a currency of
collaboration,
energy.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So David, then briefly, the step number 3, 4, and 5, and then we can expand on all of them.
I'm going to jump one ahead. When I talked about the internal script that people are talking about and how it was created, what I'd like to say is that changing one major, let's say, a process in the minds of the entrepreneur. Our answers are limited by the limitations of the question we ask and pose ourselves. Now, if I basically look at the situation in a very narrow way, we're going to ask those questions only in those narrow terms and not belong beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very important, because when I talk to an entrepreneur, I said, what is your business? And they might say, my business is selling shoes, for example, or doing a particular software, for example. I said, you're so focused on that problem that you have, so narrow, you're not looking at it from an experience or giving an experience to the customer. I said, can you talk about your product without talking about your product? He says, no. And the reason he says no is because he's defining his business and his life on very narrow pathways.
It's never about the product. It's about the experience, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's step number 3 is not about the product, it's about the experience. Very good.
Yes.
Okay, step number 4 and 5, very briefly, David, because we're going to span later, yeah?
Very not a
step
problem.
number 4 and 5, and then we span.
I would say is the very, very important thing is how you communicate. And this is one of my main things that I actually communicate to the customers. How you communicate and how you content is extremely important. Now, I have got several sites on content, and one of them is called Zen Content Mastery. My content is designed to wake zombies and the unconscious. If we don't understand how to actually move audiences, I give away a free ebook called Moving Mountains. How to move audiences which are practically dead and you're not even aware of. How do you communicate them to change large audiences' minds? That's what I call moving mountains. To actually look at you and the product and the service in a different way as an experience. Give them the identity with your product rather than selling a commodity. So how you communicate and how your content gets to the consumer is as important as the best product that you can build, whether it is a widget or anything like that.
100%.
Communication is extremely vital.
Yeah.
It's not just what you communicate, it's how. I'm going to get on to the last one. Many of my clients, and this is where we all get stuck, they cannot differentiate between price and value. I'm going to give you an example, Harry, is I had a client and I had a great, it was a difficult client. And he was one of the best software companies in my part of the world, and everybody is in software. And the first thing he kept telling me, David, nobody can beat me on price. And this is something
this is a problem, yeah.
Yeah. So he said, if you're going to lead with that, what you're really doing, I told him, is that you're trying to give a discount like a bribe to your customer to buy a product. You're not offering value. And I keep telling them is your customer, in fact, all customers all over the world are looking for value, which identifies with what they really want to do and what means to them. So this is a very important, these are the 5 steps, which I think I've, happily expand on. Yes.
Very important.
And you see what happens when you keep discounting it, then there's nothing else. You are treading water just to stay afloat.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.